Three, two, one. All right, we're live. Cool. Let's get this show
What
on
is
the road.
going on, What? 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 No.
Nope,
All
you're all
right.
set. Technical difficulties.
What is going on, Trash Talkers? We are back with another episode for you. Today, we're going to recap the NFL draft by diving into the biggest draft day steals, identifying the best and worst fits for players and teams, and crowning our draft winners and losers. We also explore Jordan Love being selected by the Packers in the first round and Jalen Hurts being selected by the Eagles in the third round. All that and much more coming your way right now. What's going on, Nick? How you doing?
Doing pretty well. It's we finally got some sports back into our life.
Thank the
Um,
Lord, huh?
yeah, we finally have something to talk about, to debate about, something to get our blood flowing, right? So, I mean, we had the draft on Thursday, and that started off. I mean, to me, for the most part, it was pretty smooth. It was nothing out of the ordinary. We didn't see too much that we were surprised about, but there were a couple things. I think for me at least, it started with Isaiah Simmons going to the Cardinals, and that was a surprise. And then we had Cesar Ruiz to the Saints, who seemed to have a pretty stellar offensive line. It's like why did they need another offensive lineman? And
Yeah,
then
specifically a center, like
yeah,
they it seemed like they were pretty set there.
right, because last year they got Eric McCoy, and he was great last year. So why are you doubling up in a position where you just have a young guy already? And then the biggest one of them all, Jordan Love to the Packers, and this is the one. Some people were like, it kind of makes sense, but then you really take a look at it, and you're like, wait, what? Aaron Rodgers has 4 years left on his contract. By the time this guy starts, he'll be in his fifth year. You'll had to pay him like $20 million that year, and just to see if he can do it. It's a prove it year, and then you have to decide whether you want to give him big bucks or move on and start over. So that was a huge question mark, and I can't imagine Aaron Rodgers was too happy about that decision. But that was just the start of it, and it got that there were a lot more questionable decisions moving forward, especially with New England. They seem to have a pretty rocky draft overall. Didn't make a whole lot of sense. And then there were other teams like the Seattle Seahawks again seemed like they had pretty glaring issues and they didn't want to address them. So there were some teams that really came away as big winners, and some that seemed like they were kind of caught off guard by this whole thing and weren't really ready for some of the selections that were made.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about some of those losers, but I mean, there were definitely some winners, and obviously there were some choices that were questionable at best. And then some questioned when certain players were going to go. A lot of mock drafts had players going in specific slots, and they were like, "There's no way they get past this round, or this selection." And we kind of saw some of those players slip, and we were like, "Why is this player slipping? What's happening? What do these teams know that we don't know?" So I think there was a lot of intrigue. Obviously, with everything that's going on in the world, this ended up being the most televised, most watched NFL draft of all time. I mean, every sports fan on the planet is looking for something, and they got the NFL draft right in the middle of everything. So I think this was a great way to kind of deter our thinking from the real world, things that are happening, and we were able to focus on sports for the first time in a long time. So I was kind of thankful for that. I want to jump into the first topic though, draft steals, and I'm going to let you take the first one. Who do you think was the biggest draft steal in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I kind of debated for a little while. There were some choices, but when it came down to it, a team like the Bills, who gave up their first round pick to go get Stephon Diggs, it made a lot of sense because they were going to be picking at 21, 22, and they would have gotten a guy like Justin Jefferson. But why not go get a guy like Stephon Diggs, who has 4 years left on his deal, and has proven it in the NFL that even when Adam Thielen wasn't on the field, this guy can be double, triple covered, gonna make plays. He is almost like Calvin Johnson in a way. He's, not the physical size, but he can be, smothered, and he's going to make stuff happen. He has that huge big playability, and that is totally worth their first round pick. Now they had two second round picks that things kind of fell into their lap a little bit. The first one being AJ Epinesa. This is a guy who started out as someone who could be picked in the teens, and then he dropped. Thought some people had him in the really early second round, and then kept dropping. And at 54, he's still available. Like that, that was insane. And a team like the Bills, who was absolutely amazing at developing their front seven, they have always had a strong pass rush. And now they go get a guy like AJ Epinesa, who did it at Iowa, who was extremely strong there, who practiced against Tristan Wirfs, one of the best tackles in this draft, every week. Now gets to develop on this line, who's already star-studded. The Bills added to this front seven in the offseason, and so they got AJ Klein and Mario Addison, and then having him on there is only going to make them that much stronger on defense. Now on the other side of the
Yeah.
ball,
Oh,
you have a guy, Devin Singletary, who had some injuries last season as a rookie, but truly showed that he is going to be their bell cow. He can tote the rock and be their guy for the foreseeable future. But they know that he has those injury issues, and what do? They see that one of the best running backs in the draft, according to PFF, the best running back in the draft, Zach Moss, is still on the board with their second round pick, and they double up at their running back position, go get him, and now you add arguably one of the a top five 1-2 punch in the league. I think that it's young, it's hard to see because they haven't really shown much. Obviously, Zach Moss hasn't played yet, but Devin Singletary is strong. You add a guy like Zach Moss who is possibly Frank Gore to a level. He runs through guys. He is extremely strong and does not. He's fearless. He does not care who you are. He is going to test you, and half the time, more than half the time, he is going to win. And so having a guy who can offset Devin Singletary like that is going to be great for the offense, great for Josh Allen. He can catch the ball, so he'll be a passing attack weapon. I think that the Bills clearly had the steals of the draft just by letting guys fall to them.
yeah. I mean, the Bills they did just that, right? They had an incredible slew of picks that they didn't expect to be able to make. It just seemed like you know every time they were on the board, we were like, how is that person still available? And then I think they were asking themselves the same question, especially with Epinesa on the board. You take a player like Ed Oliver, who they took at the top of last year's draft and really helped develop the interior of that defensive line. And now you're taking a young guy like Epinesa, you throw Mario Addison opposite of them, and now all of a sudden, I mean, you talk about a front seven, talk about a front four. That front four is going to get pressure like nobody's business, and they're honestly going to create a lot of havoc for offensive coordinators and offensive lines coming throughout the league, and it's gonna be interesting to watch for sure. Um, this Bills team is no joke, and they were built, like Sean McDermott wants, a strong defense, and now, like you said, adding Zach Moss to offset Devin Singletary, it's a strong defense, and they're getting back to running the football, and they're getting back to basics,
Mm-hmm.
not all of this the nonsense about trickery and fast wide receivers and everything like
Yeah,
that.
Sean McDermott
So
is clearly putting together, I think, a Super Bowl contender. I think this Bills team was close last year, and now they added two huge weapons that are going to bring them a lot farther.
absolutely. But somebody that I want to highlight as a draft steal, and I think it's more or less a culmination of just him falling into the best possible situation, would be the Cowboys selecting C.D. Lamb at 17th overall. How this man was still available is beyond me because the he was supposed to be the number one receiver going into this draft. People pegged him as the next DeAndre Hopkins. They expect him to do great things. If you watch any of his tape, if you throw the ball anywhere where his body can touch it, he catches it. He makes acrobatic plays. He can run every single route on the route tree. He can take the top off the defense. He can go underneath, and he's not afraid to put a shoulder into a defensive back. He really does it all, and I think that he is the exact complement to Amari Cooper that the Cowboys needed to truly give Dak Prescott the star power around him that he needs. Um, because you're going to divest a lot of resources into covering Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and whoever they have going underneath. Well, what about that guy in the backfield named Ezekiel Elliott? Now what? I mean, he if you put more coverage guys out there, he's going to run right through them. And then if you try to put a lot of run defenders out there, they're just going to take the top off the defense. So the Cowboys are going to have a very big stranglehold on some defenses going forward, and I think it was a really good opportunity. And you talked about the Bills just staying pat, staying where they are, and letting players fall to them. I mean, the Cowboys did that to a T, and I don't think there's a better way to showcase just standing pat, standing in your lane, and saying, "All right, well, we'll just figure out who falls to us, and we're not gonna trade away, and we're not gonna try to get fancy. We're gonna just do our thing."
Yeah, and it's surprising coming from a guy like Jerry Jones who loves to wheel and deal, and to see a guy like that just stand pat and took this honestly the simplest approach in this draft. I don't know how no one usually is able to sit there and let the best players fall to them. It's just not something. I think there were a lot of teams kind of overthinking things, and with the people knew how deep this wide receiver class was, but I think they're taking for granted how much better a guy like CD Lamb is than the rest. And so you're like, well, we can get a solid guy, a couple picks later, so there's no need to push up for a guy like CD Lamb. But if you really look at it, CD Lamb is this much of, he's that far apart from the next guy on the list, and he's really, like you said, really going to make a difference for them. Really going to be great paired with Amari Cooper, and I have
And
high
he was the
hopes.
third receiver off the board. I mean, Henry Ruggs and Jerry Judy went before him.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand what the Raiders and the Broncos were thinking. I mean,
Well, I can understand Jerry Judy.
Jerry Judy is
Yeah.
one, I understand. But Henry Ruggs, I mean, they clearly just wanted to take a page out of their division rival Kansas City Chiefs playbook and get the fastest guy they could possibly find and say, you're just going to create havoc down the field.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I'm not going to question the Raiders and Mike Mayock too much because Mike Mayock's last year was his first year as the GM for the Raiders, and he seemed to have found players that are difference makers. They may not have stood out. Cleveland Farrell was the fourth overall pick, their first pick in the first round last year, and he didn't, live up to the fourth round pick. He was, he only had 4.5 sacks. But then, he got a late guy, Max Crosby, who was a difference maker. You have a guy like John Abraham, really didn't get the flash, but we know is going to be huge for the Raiders. So they're adding players that will work, and I don't think we can really question him too much because he hasn't faltered just yet. But like you said, just keep pushing this. CD Lamb, absolutely amazing. Should never have fallen to 17. It's a disgrace to look at it as if he is not a good player. He's going to be a baller in this league. He is going to be one of the best receivers, um, and I think that this possibly could be the move that separates the Cowboys from the rest of the NFC East. Because when you look at the cornerback talent, it was hard enough for anybody in the division to cover Amari Cooper as it was. Now you have to cover two of them, and I
yeah,
think
I mean
honestly,
Amari Cooper got in his own way a lot of times. If you look at his splits, especially on the road, he struggled catching the ball. You're not getting that with CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb, like I said, catches absolutely everything. So even if you are going to divest resources to cover him, CeeDee Lamb is going to be wide open. Or if you switch it up, Amari Cooper is going to be wide open. I think that's. I mean, who do you want your number two corner really covering, CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper?
I
That's a
honestly
hard
think
answer.
CeeDee Lamb is even better than Amari Cooper. As hard, as crazy it is
I
to
think he
say.
can become. I think he can become better. Absolutely.
Yeah, and now you've got a good offensive minded head coach with Mike McCarthy. He's going to help develop Dak Prescott even more than Jason Garrett did, and that's only going to propel Dak Prescott to make Amari a better wide receiver and CeeDee Lamb even better. And you have Ezekiel Elliott in the background. plus that defense, they're on the road to great things. And I'm pretty sure you touched upon this Trayvon Diggs in the second round.
I
Get it?
didn't. I didn't talk about that.
So Trayvon Diggs, great wide receiver. I really love this guy's tape coming out of Alabama. He is once he's able to recover quickly. He has great agility, great elusiveness, and having those traits as a corner is imperative because you aren't going to be able to stick with a guy every single time. But having the ability to recover, Deion Sanders was terrible. He could not stay with someone like more than half the time, and his ability to make plays on the ball came from his sheer athleticism. And Trayvon Diggs has a lot of those traits. He's able to recover, able to jump, able to bend his bodies in ways that others can't, and that's going to help create a lot of turnovers and create a lot of differences for that defense. It's a guy that they've been looking for. He will eventually, I think, take over as their number one corner. But as it stands, their 1-2 punch got a lot better. I think he'll shine a lot more than Byron Jones ever did.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there were some really good steals, and I think even more so, I think there were some good players that went into the perfect situation, and I think there were some players that went into bad situations.
Mhm.
And I want to get your take. Who do you think went into the best situation for them, and who do you think went into the worst situation?
Well, so first, the best fit for me was Jedrick Wills. And, it's kind of weird to say offensive lineman. How could that work? Well, the Browns were stout. Like their roster was set up last year. They had almost all of the pieces. Now in this offseason, they go get Austin Hooper. They get an amazing wide tight end to pair with David Njoku. I don't know how anybody's going to stop them, let alone having to stop Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry. And now they go get Jack Conklin. They had the biggest issue was offensive line for them. They go get Jack Conklin. They solidified that right side. They had Joel Bitonio and J.C. Treader in the middle, and so you didn't need to really work on the interior. And so that really left one true position to fill, and you go get Jedrick Wills, who I think is the best offensive lineman in the draft. He is an amazing run blocker, an amazing pass blocker. Nick Chubb, we saw it last year. He had 1,000 yard season with a terrible offensive line, something Baker Mayfield was struggling with all season, and he had no issues. So now that he has an offensive line to run behind, it's going to make him so much better. And Jedrick Wills is going to be a huge piece. I don't think because there are so many supporting pieces on that offensive line, Jedrick Wills is going to have an easier time at playing left tackle than he did at Alabama. He is going to be able to handle his one-on-one matchups. He is in a situation where he will thrive. Their new head coach is going to, he came from the Vikings offensive system where it was run heavy, and I think with Jedrick Wills being a very run strong offensive lineman, he'll be able to get out there out in the open field and just bulldoze people, push them back, and create lanes. And I don't think if you put a guy who's successful in one situation and the coach has a system where that is exactly what they do. That his niche fits my niche. That's a perfect situation for me, and I think Jedrick Wills will be the next big offensive lineman in the league, and he is the perfect piece for the Browns, and that's why I think the Browns are set up for major success this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Jedrick Wills went to a great spot. I think that the Cleveland faithful should be very happy with the selection. You're protecting your franchise quarterback. You have a 1-2 punch in Chubb and Kareem Hunt that is really going to thrive behind this offensive line. You got the wide receivers in place last year. You saw what
Hmm.
they were able to do.
Yeah.
Um, it's I think it's a win-win for both the player and the team.
Uh,
I'm gonna give my best player too. I think it was Javon Kinlaw. I think the defensive tackle going to the San Francisco 49ers was just the absolute icing on the cake for me. I mean, you talk about the San Francisco 49ers last year, they lost to Forrest Buckner. Okay, but then they just replaced him with arguably the second best defensive tackle in the draft and the best 4-3 defensive tackle in this draft, and that being Javon Kinlaw. He's one of the most athletic defensive tackles you can find. And I think they're going to utilize him in more ways than just, run stuffing and rushing the passer. I think that you're going to see him drop into coverage a couple times just on sneak plays. Drop the defensive tackle as like a small spy because he can keep up with
Oh
quarterbacks and
yeah.
he's strong enough to handle the middle of the line. I think that this was a perfect fit because if there's one coach and GM who's willing to take a risk and do some crazy things, I think you're looking at San Francisco with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. Those guys really know what they're doing, and they love versatility. They love the ability to kind of move chess pieces around the board and kind of confuse their opponents. And I think um, this was with the pick that they traded to they got from the Colts because of the DeForest Buckner trade. So you simply just replace DeForest Buckner with another player that you're going to have under rookie contract for the next 5 years. I think this is an absolute fit for both the 49ers and Kinlaw. I don't think he should be extremely happy for where he went, especially a team that was just in the Super Bowl.
Right. I mean, you go, you trade away DeForest Buckner, like you said, and now you're pretty much getting a younger DeForest Buckner who's going to perform at a high level right away. And not only is Javon Kinlaw a beast by himself, but now you put him on that line with Ark Armstead, Joey Bosa, D Ford,
Nick
Solomon
Bosa.
Thomas. Nick Bosa, and D Ford, Solomon Thomas, like the list goes on, and they have endless talent. They are, their defensive line coach, their defensive coordinator will know exactly what to do with Javon Kinlaw, and he is going to be a mammoth, very hard to stop. He's a man you're going to have to try to double up, but it's going to be near impossible with everybody else to cover. And so that's going to cause a lot of issues. So I really like Javon Kinlaw. He's going to thrive in San Francisco.
Yeah, I think they're very happy that they were able to turn a former defensive tackle into the next great defensive tackle for at least 5 years
Right.
on a rookie contract.
Yeah. So now moving on. Now for my worst fit, I have Isaiah Simmons. Now this kind of comes as it can makes you kind of scratch your head a little bit because he is one of the best defensive players that we've seen in the draft ever, and just because of his physical abilities. But when we look at this, this is the worst fit. And this is a Arizona Cardinals team that got Devon Kennard, they got Devondre Campbell, they have Jordan Hicks, they have their linebackers, and Isaiah Simmons, he's a safety linebacker, but I think he will make more of an impact as a linebacker, but there really is no spot for him in there on that line. They run a 4-3 defense, and he can play coverage, but do you want him? He's not a backup linebacker. So now you're pretty much saying you're gonna have to play safety and safety only for us because there really is no spot. We can bring you down in the box as a to help in the run game, and in the trenches, but I just don't think that limiting this guy's abilities is a good idea for what he's capable of. If he is able to play safety, play nickel corner, play linebacker, outside and inside, why? I just don't think that. I think they had bigger needs that could have been filled. And Isaiah Simmons, I'm sure he'll make plays for them, but he'll be in a limited capacity. I think he'll be capable of much more than he's actually going to produce. And I think you know it's just not the best fit for me. I'm not. I really didn't like Isaiah Simmons going to the Cardinals. It's not the Cardinals. Will get some use out of him, but Isaiah Simmons really won't be able to show his full potential.
I mean, with Isaiah Simmons, I see him as, the jack of all trades, right? Like he can rush the passer, he can play nickel coverage. He can cover opposing tight ends. He can play safety if he wants. He can really be put all over the place. Um, and I think one of the biggest question marks is, do Cliff Kingsbury and the defensive side of the Arizona Cardinals, are they willing to do that, or are they going to keep him in place? Because if I were to guess, I don't think they're going to use him properly. And I think that's why I'm kind of with you on one of these on the worst fits, because I think he's not going to be able to showcase his complete talent. Um, you know, I look at somebody like Tyron Matthew, right? All right. They play a lot of the same. Obviously, Isaiah Simmons physically is completely different,
Yeah.
but scheme wise, they play a lot of the same positions. Nickelback, they can play safety, they
Hmm.
can be in the box, they blitz everything.
Right.
So I think Isaiah Simmons, I think they want him for that purpose. But again, I mean, they didn't utilize Tyron Matthew to the best of his ability, and I just don't. I hope that they learned, but I don't know if
Well, it's
I
also a
don't know that
different
they did.
system. They have new coaches since Tyron Matthew was there.
True, true.
So the guys who even got Tyron Matthew and finally figured out what to do with him, when it was too late, now aren't even there, and so these guys are gonna have to learn all over, for the first time, what to do with this talent. And I don't think that's the smart situation. He should have gone to a place where he could have moved around, where there were multiple holes in the system where he could play safety, he could play linebacker, because if you're able to move a guy around and put him in the best situation in different, move him around in different packages and continuously keep him on the field, you don't want a guy like Isaiah Simmons off the field because he can make a play every single down. And now, with limitations, what if you're in a single high safety? Are you going to bring him in as a linebacker? Are you gonna, are you gonna sit him out? Like, what are you gonna do? Because they have Buda Baker, who I think has been in that system. He proved himself last year. He was a Pro Bowler. This guy is, clearly a talented safety, and I think I'd rather have a guy like Buda Baker on the field in single high safety, than a guy like Isaiah Simmons. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
agree.
There's a lot of limitations, and that's where my concern comes in.
Sure. Um, yeah, I don't want to beat a dead horse too much, but I tend to agree with you. Um, I want to go with my worst, and it's it's not just a worst fit. I think it was one of the worst selections in the first round that you could have
Oh
gotten,
yeah.
and this was the Raiders choosing cornerback Damon Arnett.
Hmm.
Damon Arnett, I believe, was the third corner taken.
Yeah, right behind C.J. Henderson. Yep.
Right.
So he was taken 20th
He was taken
or
before Christian Fulton. He was taken
19th. Yep.
before um, Jeff Gladney.
Yep.
There were so many. I think he was the ninth ranked corner, and
Yep.
they took him as the third corner in the first round.
I actually think he was the fourth. I think AJ Terrell was taken by the Falcons at 17.
Okay, even so, AJ Terrell being taken, it still doesn't make up for the fact that this guy was a who when he was selected. I think everybody collectively said that at the same time, because we truly didn't understand what the Raiders were doing. This is a guy they could have easily gotten in the second round, and there were plenty of players that they could have chosen at their position in the first round. And I struggled to understand what Mike Mayock and John Gruden were thinking when they chose this guy. They clearly believe in him more than I think everyone else, but like I said, they could have easily chosen him in the second round. He would have still been
Oh
there
yeah.
when their selection
even
came up.
even though they didn't, I don't believe they had a second round selection, or maybe it was like late second round. But they had two-thirds. They could have moved up and gotten him in the second round,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
used this first round pick on somebody else, another um, player that could fill another hole. Yeah, Damon Arnett. I don't know too much about him, and that's because he was just so far down the list. He was like the seventh, eighth corner in the draft class. And this is where I have to really rely on Mike Mayock. This is Mike Mayock before he was a GM. he spent many years evaluating talent, evaluating college talent. And so I have to think he's going to continue those abilities, using those abilities as a general manager. And he sees something in this guy that John Gruden will be able to work with. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but we're gonna have to see. This is kind of like a TBD, type of player, and it's good. I don't think it's gonna really pan out for them. I think this is gonna be a blunder. But Damon Arnett, it's a huge head scratcher. It really doesn't make any sense. He fills a hole, and I think that's why I was kind of resilient on making him my least, worst fit because he does fill a hole. He has a purpose, but
I
again,
mean, his
I quote
purpose was that he was one of the faster corners coming out of the draft, and I think that they got him specifically for the Kansas City Chiefs. This was their answer to the Chiefs, both having Tyreek Hill
and Mecole
and
Hardman.
Mecole Hardman, correct? So just I understand it from that aspect, but again, this is a player you could have gotten in the second or third round and you took him with your second first round pick, there were plenty of players still available, and it's not like the Raiders don't have other holes that they couldn't have filled, at the same time. So I think that this was a big swing and a miss. I don't like the pick. I don't the fit doesn't matter too much, but the pick itself, I definitely struggle with understanding.
Absolutely, yeah, it doesn't make much sense.
Um, I think another head scratcher, if you will, comes from some of the quarterback selections that we saw over the weekend. And the first one that I want to bring to light, and I'm sure everybody is aware by now, would be Jordan Love heading to the Packers in the first round. Um, I honestly just I from me a huge blunder by the Green Bay Packers. Again, this is another player that they could have selected later on in the draft. I just don't think that they needed to spend a first round pick on a quarterback when Aaron Rodgers is still under center and is under contract for 4 more years. I think that's the biggest issue that I have here is that um, you know Aaron Rodgers has 4 more years on his contract. This has a maximum of 5 years. That means you're giving this guy a possibility of starting for 1 year just to evaluate him and 4 years in practice. I think that there's got to be something else going on here. So the way I labeled this was head scratching, but understandable. I understand that a uh, you need a long term plan behind Aaron Rodgers. I understand that you don't want to get into the same issues that the Patriots found themselves in after having to trade Jimmy Garoppolo and then Brady walking out on them as well. I think that this is Green Bay's way of saying, listen, we know that you know this is the end of the road. And obviously Aaron Rodgers hasn't been the same player. He's continuing to decline a little bit. Um, I think this is their way of making sure that they have an answer. And one thing I also saw, and I tend to agree with, Aaron Rodgers is very outspoken. He demands a lot from his team. I think this is a way for the team to get a little leverage back in their relationship with Aaron Rodgers. Um, I think this is a way that they can light a fire under him to work harder to show him that he's not the only quarterback worthy of starting on the roster, and that they were willing to divest some of their top resources to getting a replacement quarterback, and they're going to be willing to remove him if he continues to act out and continues to make a nuisance of himself, especially with Matt LaFleur.
Yeah, I mean, it was no question that Jordan Love came into the draft as somebody who needs to. He's raw talent, raw ability, and is going to need to be coached up. And it makes sense to put him behind a veteran quarterback, but again, not behind somebody who you want for the foreseeable future. You're gonna have for the foreseeable future. A future Hall of Famer, and Aaron Rodgers just doesn't make a lot of sense. He could have. It might take a year, it might take 2 years to develop Jordan Love, but 4 years, that's absurd. I mean, I understand what they're trying to, their thinking is, hey, we did it once, we can do it again. And I just don't think that it's not common in today's NFL to sit on a guy, especially a first round pick, for that long. It's not. It just I don't like the fit. Jordan Love is going to, like you said, Aaron Rodgers is going to light a fire under him because he asked for more weapons, and they have in the last 15 years, the Packers haven't gotten a, uh, like a positional player, a wide receiver, any playmaker in the first round,
on the
and
offensive side.
on the yeah, and so now you go get Jordan Love, and this only this is gonna piss him off. This is and now you but and not only pisses him off, but now he has to train this guy. He has to teach him pretty much
No way.
everything he knows. We've heard so many stories of Aaron Rodgers just he doesn't care about his teammates that much. He's so self-centered and cocky, and it's all about him. And when it's all about him, and now he's angry. When you don't like a guy, when you see a threat, and you now have to face that threat head on by teaching him and seeing him every day, it's just not going to work. That's a cause for disaster, and I don't see it working out. I don't think Jordan Love, even if Aaron Rodgers finishes his contract there and then retires or moves on, and then Jordan Love takes over, is he really going to have learned 4 years worth of knowledge from Aaron Rodgers? Will that translate? Will that even translate to the football field? What are you really going to get out of Jordan Love after this experiment is over? Because that's really what this is, and it was a complete waste.
My guess is that Aaron Rodgers isn't going to last his entire contract. If I were a betting man, and I'm not, I would say that Aaron Rodgers will not play the entirety of his contract in Green Bay. I would imagine that they will either release him or work out a trade with somebody that's quarterback needy, maybe in the final years of a window that they have, maybe Pittsburgh. Um, they might have an opportunity to kind of compete, but they need somebody who has experience and can get them over the hump. I think that that's where you see him in the next 2 to 3 years. But
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that scenario. I could also see another Tom Brady Garoppolo situation where a team calls up like, "Hey, I want Aaron Rodgers," and they're like, "You're absolutely crazy. All right, give me Jordan Love," and they're like, "All right, it's gonna cost this," and then that's exactly, I could see that happening again for another team that will need a quarterback, will be in the market and is willing to pay the price because they're going to get a quarterback who's been under a superstar, and they're ready to rock and roll. We're going to get our first taste of Jordan Love to see what he is right off the bat in the preseason, and then I guess really the next time we're going to get to see him is in the following preseason, right before the 2021 season. So you're gonna have to. We'll see some improvement, and maybe if there is a big leap from one preseason to the next, that's when another team pulls the trigger and calls up Green Bay and says, "Hey, we want to trade for this guy," and if not, maybe you'll be willing to trade this guy. One, they'll probably call about both of them, see which one they can get, which one is the better deal.
I mean,
Uh,
that's what San Francisco did, right? Just to
yeah,
bring
and
people back to that.
that's
San
a
Francisco called the Patriots and said, what's it going to take to trade Tom Brady? And Bill Belichick almost hung up the phone, and then John Lynch was like, all right, well, how about Jimmy Garoppolo? And then they worked out a trade, and the rest is history.
yeah, and I mean
So I understand that.
that all started because there was rumors that Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo were not getting along. And so if I'm sure we are going to hear reports about Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers not getting along, and that's when a team, if Jordan Love's been in the system long enough and learned something from Aaron Rodgers, that's when it's going to be easier because then the team making that call, wanting to get that player, has the leverage because they're going to have they know they're going to have to move one of them, and it's usually going to be the young guy who is inexperienced, hasn't proven himself, because you want to stick with your Tom Brady, your Aaron Rodgers, the surefire weapon that can get you to a Super Bowl year in and year out.
Absolutely. Um, I want to kind of move on from that though, and I want to talk about another head scratching quarterback selection that we saw in the draft, and that was Jalen Hurts in the third round going to the Eagles. Um, I think Eagles fans were a little questioned at Howie Roseman and saying, "What are you doing here? We clearly have our franchise guy in Carson Wentz, and now you're taking a third round asset, which there were plenty of players that the Eagles could have used on the board still, and they decided to divert that attention to Jalen Hurts, and it's very interesting to me that they were willing to do that. And then you look at Howie Roseman, and he was quoted as saying that he wants the Eagles to be a quarterback factory. I don't know if he meant to use those words, but the fact that he did is a huge cause for concern. The fact that the Eagles are a quarterback factory is not a good thing.
No.
Okay, you don't want to be churning out quarterbacks year after year after year. That is not what you want to do, and you especially do not want to have to spend a third round pick as an insurance policy for your franchise quarterback. So I mean, maybe I'm missing something here, but Nick, what do you think? Like,
Well, I
was
think
this did this make sense to you?
kind of, and I think we're gonna disagree a little bit here. I don't mind them taking Jalen Hurts. I thought it was premature. I thought a guy like Jacob Eason has more talent right off the bat than Jalen Hurts. But when you have a guy like Carson Wentz who has pretty good speed and great size for the quarterback position, he'll be able to teach Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts seemed to get better. Once he left Alabama, went to Oklahoma, he seemed to improve his mechanics and his ability to read the defense. And I think being able to sit behind Carson Wentz, he'll be able to learn much more. He'll be able to develop, and with that along with his physical abilities, that can make for a great quarterback. And I think when you know a guy like Carson Wentz, who's been hurt twice, he's been lost two of his what 4 seasons so far, 3 seasons. You kind of need an insurance policy for him. You want somebody who is similar, who will be able to play in the same offense and give you a similar output. And I think that Jalen Hurts will be able to do that eventually. It's going to take, I'd say, at least a half a season, maybe a full season before Hurts is ready to go in if Carson Wentz were to go down. And that's kind of right around the timeline where I would expect Carson Wentz to go down. I think the Eagles are expecting Carson Wentz to not be there franchise quarterback at this point. If he goes down one more time, he has 3 strikes and he's already used 2 of them up. So one more and they have to call it on him. They won't be able to give him that big contract. They will have to move on. And this is a different situation than Jordan Love because you don't have to wait 4 years. You have 2 more years with Carson Wentz on his rookie deal. He's going into year 4, right? And then he'll have the 5th year option. So then you'll be able, I don't know if he's in his 5th year option now, but so this is exactly when I think the perfect time because Jalen Hurts gets to develop under Carson Wentz. He doesn't have the veteran experience, but like you would really want, but he will be able to teach him a lot of things. Carson Wentz has been around the block already because he's had to face adversity multiple times. And he's been in the big games. He didn't play in the Super Bowl, but he was there. He went through the playoffs. He was a part of the team through the process, so he'll be able to teach him what it's like, what that feels like, and how to handle it. And I think that's pretty much all the experience you need. That's when the coaches will be able to pretty much do the rest. Teach him the fundamentals, teach him the mechanics, teach him what to do in other situations, and I think everybody around him will be able to make it work. Doug Peterson is a great coach. I think he'll be able to help him out a lot. So I do see a need for a guy like Jalen Hurts because I really don't trust Carson Wentz. I don't think he's going to be long for the Eagles, possibly even the NFL if this guy can't stay healthy. He could be the next, Chad Pennington.
Yeah, but my biggest issue is that you divested a third round pick into a quarterback that you're planning on sitting the bench most of the time.
Second round
I
pick.
mean, yes, sorry, second round pick. So you're taking a second round quarterback and saying your entire job is just to be ready for our starter to go down because it's more likely than not that he will. I don't like that. I think that that's a huge red flag. You can't take a second round pick, which is all too valuable, especially in this year's draft, and you're going to make it a backup quarterback the selection. To me, it just does not make sense. I understand the rationale that you laid out, but there's no way that you can take what that pick is worth and say we're not like that talent level that we selected is never really going to see the field unless there's an injury involved. And
But I think you need to have an insurance policy when you have a guy that 2/3 of his career have been lost to injury already. You
But there's
need to,
there's quarterbacks out there. Go, you can get
but
Andy Dalton.
Jalen
You could
Hurts
have
is a
gotten Jameis Winston. You could get Cam Newton. There's plenty of insurance
but
policies out there.
he's a
You use a
lot
second round pick.
he's a lot cheaper, and now you have him for 4 years. You don't have to pay him that much,
You
and
have him for 3 years.
a second round pick, I'm pretty sure it's 4 years.
It's
But
only 3 years.
anyway, that's still enough time because Carson Wentz, I don't think is long for this team. I think they're going to have to move on. You can't give this guy 35 million dollars a year to play 4 or 5 games a season
Then why is he your quarterback now?
because
What's the
he's still
point?
on a rookie contract and he's still producing. But now you have an insurance policy for him.
So you've had to waste a first round and a second round pick just to create the quarterback position. You know how ridiculous that sounds?
Well, the Eagles spent a lot of money in free agency bolstering their defense, and they got
And their offensive
they
line got worse.
they got Jalen Rager, who could be the next Deshaun Watson, is gonna fill that hole. He's good hands,
Jackson.
good speed. Deshaun Jackson, thank you. Good hands, good speed. He'll be able to create plays for them alongside Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey. They have two tight ends already, solid offensive line, so they don't really have many holes. And I think you can take a flyer at that point on a backup quarterback who could turn into your franchise at some point.
I don't like the fact that you divested again a second round pick and a first round pick into your quarterback position, and they're just like one of them is just going to sit there either injured or waiting for the other one to get injured.
Well, what happens
That
if say Carson Wentz plays a great season, but they know Jalen Hurts is going to be capable of taking over quickly? Then you can trade him with his 5th year option, sign him to the 5th year option, trade him, and get something back for Carson Wentz. You
maybe,
you
but
can
he's already hurt that trade value. They're not going to get anything more than a third round pick at this point. They'd be
I
lucky to get that.
it's possible they might be able to get some more. There are going to be some teams that won't be able to
Unless
get.
you're trading with Bill O'Brien, there's no shot that you're getting more than a third round pick for
I mean,
Carson Wentz.
hey, they might need to get a new quarterback in Houston if Deshaun Watson doesn't like the weapons he has,
They
and
just
that
they
that
just exercised his 5th year option, so he's there for 2 more years at least.
well, yeah, if but I'm saying if the relationship goes sour, they might want to get something back for Deshaun Watson because obviously Deshaun Watson is worth a lot more than Carson Wentz, and they'll be able to get. I think Bill O'Brien will be able to get at least one first round pick for Deshaun Watson,
Yeah,
probably at
I,
least
I just
two.
again, I want to bring it back to the Eagles. I don't think that this was a good move. I really don't.
I
And
think
I'm
it's
sure you can. I'm sure we can both agree. Howie Roseman coming out with the QB
yeah
factory comment
that's so
was
stupid.
was that was very bad on his part. Like
Yeah, and
a GM who has been in the league for God knows how long, 18 years at this point. He's been in the league forever, and this is how he talks about his team. That's not a good thing. Like
no.
he should understand that. So I think that the Eagles have some heavy work to do. And like I said, their offensive line got worse this offseason. They lost their Pro Bowl left tackle Jason Peters, who's still sitting there in free agency. But I mean,
Right,
anybody they
but
get is not going to be as nearly as good as he was.
well, they already have his backup. They drafted him last year in the first round, so that's already set. They don't need. Jason Peters got hurt last season, and I can't remember his first name, but their first round pick filled in right away, was no issues. I think he's their starter for the next 10, 15 years. So that's not an issue. That's why I'm saying there's not many holes. I think there is room to take a flyer. the Eagles are definitely one of the teams that didn't really have a sense of what they were doing, but and the picks that were available to them, there wasn't much to choose from. So they were like, hey, let's just let's take a gamble on a couple players, and obviously Jalen Hurts was one of them. To me, I think it has more potential than not to pay off.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna have to agree to disagree on this one because I just don't like it at all. There's not one part of me that likes that pick, and not that I'll ever feel bad for Eagles fans, but
Nope.
you know, they should not be happy. I think with the selection, and I know plenty of Eagles fans, and they have let me know that they do not like it. So, um, let's move on. I want to finish this out. We've talked a lot about the draft. Obviously, we did our draft companions. That was a fun 2 night event that we did. We look to do more of those. We'd love more people to come in and watch and join us in the chat. That was a fun time. We had a blast. So overall, I want you to give me your winner and lose one winner, one loser from the draft.
Yeah, so my winner, and this kind of surprised myself, honestly, but I had to, at first, in the first round, I have the New Orleans Saints as my winner, and first round, I was like, this is a complete waste. You're drafting a center, or an interior lineman, who isn't going to play his first year. They have Eric McCoy, they drafted last year, stud. And then you have Larry Warford and Andres Pete at your guard. Andres Pete just got a huge contract in the offseason. Larry Warford, he's going to last year of his contract, but he's still a Pro Bowler. So what are you doing? Why? It doesn't make sense. You don't need to develop an interior lineman. Usually they're plug and play. You don't need to do much with them, especially in the first round. So this didn't make too much sense to me, but there are reports that they might try to trade Larry Warford. I'm sure there's going to be a team out there that will pay for Larry Warford, and they'll be able to create more cap room that way. And now Cesar Ruiz now can start. So I see the value there. It does make sense. But then where I really see the value is in rounds 2 and 3. In the I believe the Saints. So they got Zach Bond and Auden Tate. Not Auden Tate. I'm sorry. They got Adam Trotman with their. I believe they were both in the third round. I don't think they had a second round pick, but Zach Bond made it to the early second round, and this guy was first round talent. A lot of people had it projected to the Patriots because he looked like Kyle Van Noy. But the what came out was, he has a little bit of an injury history, and pretty much who everybody has one.
Sounds
Who
like the
doesn't?
perfect Patriots pick to me.
Right. And but this guy kept falling, 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 and it was like, what? This makes absolutely no sense. What is wrong with him? And I don't think there really is anything wrong with him. And the Saints lost AJ Klein. He went to the Bills. So now there's an immediate hole to be filled, and they are going to. They had the perfect guy for it. I really like. I believe it was in my mock draft in the first round. I even had Zach Bond going to them. So now getting him in the third round, great, great steal. I think this guy, he's a heavy hitter. He is, going to take on any challenge. You can play him in pass coverage. You can rush him. He's a pure outside linebacker, and he is going to fit perfectly in the system. I really, really like that. And then you have a guy like Jared Cook who is in the last year of his deal. He's probably going to retire or move on after this, and so you need to get someone to develop at the tight end position. And Adam Trotman kept falling. The Patriots picked two tight ends ahead of him. The Bears picked Cole Kmet in the second round. And this guy was arguably the second best tight end in the draft. This tight end class wasn't deep, but Adam Trotman seemed to be the clear cut number two. And having him fall behind Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene, it just made no sense why this guy was still on the board. And it was almost going to the fourth round, day 3, and this guy's still available. So the Saints were like, okay, he's still there. Let's move up. Got him at the end of the third round, and now they have a guy who will be able to learn behind a great tight end in Jared Cook. He'll be on the field quite a bit because they've a solid rotation going in New Orleans with their tight ends. and he gets to get the ball thrown to him by one of the greatest quarterbacks ever in Drew Brees. It's kind of a perfect situation. This is another weapon. They had Michael Thomas, they got Emmanuel Sanders in free agency. They had Jared Cook. Now you had Adam Trotman, and you have Alvin Kamara in the back. In the back, you know the Saints are putting together a team that is going to go toe to toe with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In my opinion, the New Orleans Saints are the only team in the NFL that will be able to compete with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And these are two Titans that will be clashing twice a year. Can't wait to see it. And Adam Trotman could be a big difference maker for them. Same for Zach Bond. I think these two guys will make plays and really add to the offense and defense for the Saints. So I really love them. Now,
Yeah. Oh,
you want to. I was gonna list my loser, but I don't know if you want to just go with your.
yeah. I'll go with my winner first. I think we're gonna start. I'm gonna list mine, and I mentioned them at the top of the show, and that was the Dallas Cowboys. I think they had one of the simplest yet best approaches to this draft, and that was to sit and do nothing and just take the selections that they have. They weren't going to trade up. They weren't going to trade back. They weren't going to move all around the board like you see some teams do. They were going to just make the selections that they have. They were going to let players fall to them. They understood that this draft was so deep in talent and that not everybody was going to draft according to plan. That meant some players were going to fall, some were going to be taken ahead of them. They kind of let the pieces, play themselves out, and then they did an amazing job. So I just want to go through some of the picks that they had. They took wide receiver C.D. Lamb, obviously in the first round, uh, cornerback Trayvon Diggs, D tackle Neville Gallimore. They took interior lineman Tyler Biadasz, Wisconsin defensive end Bradley Ani, and quarterback Ben DiNucci. Oh, and they also took cornerback Reggie Robinson. Um, every single pick that they made was a higher value than what the pick that they had was. Just looking at CeeDee Lamb, Trayvon Diggs, Neville Gallimore, and Tyler Biadasz as the true standouts in their class, Biadasz is going to be the immediate plug and play option to replace Travis Frederick, who before the draft announced his retirement from football, citing some health issues that he's had to deal with in the past. They take one Wisconsin guy and then replace him with another
Another.
Wisconsin
Yeah,
guy. So I think that was kind of fun. Obviously, we've gone through C.D. Lamb, what he means to that Cowboys offense. Trayvon Diggs being the back end help that they needed at corner, falling to them in the second round was incredible. And then, they've done some really good defensive line work this offseason, shoring up that D line, especially the interior. And now you're taking Neville Gallimore, and you're rich beyond rich at this point. Um, because he is going to provide between Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe.
mm-hmm.
You have Neville Gallimore as your third option in the middle of the defense with Demarcus Lawrence and Greg Hardy. No, not Greg Hardy.
Alden
Alden
Smith.
Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Alden Smith on the outside. That is one hell of a front four, let me tell you. So the Cowboys are in a very very competitive class. I think
And they also got
obviously
Randy Gregory back.
that's true. They did get Randy Gregory back. I mean, all of this while Jerry Jones was drafting from his yacht. I mean, you couldn't have asked for much more than that. Uh, he did everything that he could possibly do. Lamb was a massive upgrade from Randall Cobb. Diggs and Robinson are good rebounds from losing Byron Jones to the Dolphins. Um, Gallimore gave them another way to get to the quarterback. He's a great pass rushing defensive tackle. He's going to learn a lot from Gerald McCoy being there. I think that was a huge pickup for them. I can't overstate that enough. Um, and then it was just they just overall did an absolute incredible job, and I can't give them enough credit.
Yeah, this really was the right move. Staying put at what picks you had and just picking the best available. They had the best approach. Honestly, they had one of the best approaches. And like you said, Tyler Biadasz gonna probably be the starter. He'll probably have to compete with Joe Looney, but still you're not falling short with either of them. So you're gonna have still probably the strongest offensive line in the league, no matter who you go with, and you have CeeDee Lamb going to help Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper and every other offensive position because it's a huge threat the defense has to worry about. And then you have like we said, Trayvon Diggs gonna be a star. Him and Chidobe Awuzie are going to pair nicely together. I think Trayvon Diggs will be better than Byron Jones was for the
And don't
Cowboys.
forget they have Ha Ha Clinton Dix at safety, so like they have really good defensive backfield that they're all gonna learn and grow together.
Hmm. Yeah, and then we saw last year Gerald McCoy was in that rotation in Carolina, and he did fairly well there. So now he's in another rotation because they add Neville Gallimore, who is an easy starter on the other 31 rosters, and now he gets to come in and out. It's going to be extremely hard for an offensive lineman to deal with these guys who are rotating in and out because they're staying healthy, they're staying rested,
Right.
and exactly, and that's gonna be tough to deal with for 60 minutes of football. In those later quarters, have good luck dealing with either Dontari Poe, Dontari Poe, Neville Gallimore, or Gerald McCoy. That's gonna be really tough. Plus those ends, they're building a very strong team in Dallas that really is propelling them ahead of everybody else in the division.
For sure. And how about your loser? Who did you have as your
So
draft loser?
I had the Seattle Seahawks. I absolutely hated their first, I think it was like 3 rounds of picks. So in the first round, they drafted Jordan Brooks. I talked about Zach Bond, who has a little bit of injury histories, and that's why he was falling. Well, you want to talk about injury histories? Jordan Brooks has had multiple injuries in college, and he is a great linebacker, but why are you drafting a guy in the first round when he's going to be on the field less than Carson Wentz will? It just doesn't make sense. You don't waste a first round pick like that if you know the guy is not going to be there, especially a linebacker. You need them there for 3 downs every game, and now you're wasting a great pick. And then they go in the second round. You think they're going to go finally address offensive line because you want to see Russell Wilson stop running for his life all the time. And nope, they go edge. So they add a linebacker in the first round, now an edge guy who could play outside linebacker or D end for them. Darrell Taylor, who no one really knows. Who knows what he's going to do? Took him way above where he should have ever gone, probably a third or fourth round guy. And now in the second round, early second round, this guy is not gonna. I don't think he's going to be a big playmaker for them. I don't think if you're trying to replace Jadeveon Clowney, this is not the guy to do it. And now that you add an edge guy like this, you're pretty much taking yourself out of the stakes for Jadeveon Clowney. You say you're still interested in bringing him back, but you're clearly not if you're going to go back to back linebacker and edge in the draft. And finally, in the third round, they go get themselves an offensive lineman to help their quarterback with Damian Lewis, a guard out of LSU. Now, I don't know too much about Damian Lewis. He's a guard, so interiors usually, fairly well, and he's coming from LSU, the current national champions, but that was a stellar offensive line. So I don't really know how good this guy is, how much he'll be able to do on an offensive line that is struggling for help. So he's gonna have to really prove himself as a guy who will be able to help against Arik Armstead, Javon Kinlaw, and Chris Jones, and Chandler Jones, and all these other big guys in the NFC West that he'll have to face twice a year. It's a strong task to conquer, and I don't know if he's going to be able to do it. I thought that they could have gotten a guy like Tyler Biadasz who would have been a lot stronger of a pick for them, and I just don't like these picks. And then they add in the fourth round to top it off Colby Parkinson, a tight end. Makes absolutely no sense. This is a team who just added Greg Olsen. They have 3 tight ends who were coming back from injury last year. Now you're adding a fifth. Well, I don't know what kind of offense you're trying to run in
Well, they're trying
Seattle.
to take the playbook out of Chicago Bears.
Yeah, Chicago Bears. I mean,
They're trying to.
another
The
another
Bears have what 10 tight ends on
Uh,
their roster.
it's
So
incredible how deep these teams are going on tight end, and I don't see it working out. I think it's a complete backfire. And of all teams, I think the Seahawks are a complete bust this year in the draft. They're making no sense. They're not helping themselves out. They're not getting more weapons for their quarterback. They're not protecting him any better. It's a complete fail. Absolute complete
I
fail.
think the Seahawks' biggest pick out of their entire draft was Alton Robinson late in the draft. They got the defensive end. I think he was a really good pickup for them. I think he's going to provide a lot of help. I think he was an undervalued asset coming into the draft, and then he fell on top of that.
I mean,
Um,
we see how good the Seattle Seahawks are good at drafting DNs. Last year in the first round, they got L.J. Collier. He doesn't fit their system at all, yet they drafted him, and look what he did. Nothing last year. And I don't see him doing anything better. They got Jerron Reed back, but great. That's a player you had last year. That's not an improvement. So
just refilling that same
yeah,
that
exactly.
same hole.
And Nate, on the other side, you're adding Daryl Taylor, and behind him, Jordan Brooks. These are guys who may stay healthy, may perform, but most likely they're not going to, and especially not at that first and second round value.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna take my class, and I'm going to. It's the most obvious, I think. Um, I didn't want to overthink this one. The Green Bay Packers. Whew, what a big swing and a miss this entire draft was for them. So I'm just gonna run through their picks pretty quickly. First round was Jordan Love. Then they selected running back AJ Dillon out of Boston College. Not bad. He's a little undersized, but he's extremely strong and he's a power runner. We'll get to why the pick doesn't make sense in a second. Tight end Josiah DeGuara,
hmm
linebacker Kamal Martin, guard John Runyon, center Jake Hansen, offensive tackle Simon Stepaniak, safety Vernon Scott, and defensive end slash outside linebacker Jonathan Garford. I
Oh.
don't know what Brian uh, Gutekunst was thinking. I really don't know what was happening here. We went over the Jordan Love. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse. AJ Dillon, he's a good running back. I don't hate the pick. I hate the pick for the Packers because they
It's a
have Jamal
horrible
Williams
fit.
and Aaron Jones.
Horrible
You
fit.
don't need a third running back that's gonna do exactly what those two do.
hmm
I it just if you want him to catch balls, he'll catch balls. If you want him to run downhill, he'll run downhill. I don't like I don't know what they are trying to do. I think they saw what San Francisco did last year and had a rotation of three running backs, and they're like, yeah, let's do that. But I mean, San Francisco realized that they didn't need three, and they just got rid of Matt Breida. I mean, I really just it doesn't make sense. Then you pick up tight end Josiah DeGuara. There were so many tight ends on the board
Yeah, Adam
late in
Trotman was still on
college.
the board at this point.
Yeah, I mean there were when I say so many, I mean I would have taken maybe 6 or 7 tight ends that were still on the board before I would have even found this guy's name.
Alberto,
Um,
yeah, so many.
yeah, I just really don't understand at all. Kamal Martin, I don't know much about him. Um, as far as I know, he was a pretty solid linebacker. He's not going to wow you with his athleticism, and he doesn't have like the over leadership qualities that you look for in the middle of the field. So I think that was kind of
It's
a
also a
struggle
position.
there.
It's a position they're already deep at. They have
Right,
Preston Smith, the other Smith, I can't remember his name,
Zedarius,
Zadarius Smith, and then now they got Christian
Christian
Kirksey.
Kirksey. Right. So I mean, the three of you don't need. I don't know. You just drafted a backup.
They got
The best pick
yeah.
out of all of this was John Runyon out of Michigan.
hmm
I thought John Runyon was again undervalued coming into the draft. I think his tape showed a lot more. He was very versatile in both the run and pass game, but he was also Michigan ran a certain style early on in his career where the quarterback was doing a lot of uh, pre-snap stuff, and he was able to kind of keep up. And he's going to be a great guard at the next level. I think. I think he's a really good depth pick here, and he's going to end up starting, whether it's for the Packers or for somebody else, I don't know. But he will end up starting. And then everybody else that they drafted, it were like, I mean, they could have gotten them as undrafted free agents, in my opinion. It just doesn't make sense. The Green Bay Packers get a big F in my book. I mean, they clearly lost the deepest, most talented draft you're going to see in a long time, and this is not the draft that you wanted to whiff on by any stretch.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Did not make a lot of sense. When you have, we already talked about Jordan Love, so I'm going to pass on him right now. But going back to AJ Dillon, when you have guys like Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, who were absolute workhorses last year. When one wasn't healthy, the other one was performing at their highest level, putting up 300-yard games in scrimmage yards. You don't need to add another guy. AJ Dillon, he's too good to be the third running back on this list. He's not. He's going to be in on poor. He's not even. He's like a multi-use guy. He's not, you know, better in the pass game than he is in the run game. He's going to just. He's kind of like an every down back in a normal system. And so having three of those guys who can do well in the pass and run game, there's no, it's not doing much. It's not adding another layer or improving the position in any way. You have three guys who can do the same exact thing. So I don't know what you're really, if you're just trying to get depth, you really only need two of them, and you already had them. Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams showed that they can both be 1,000-yard rushers each. And A.J. Dillon, I believe, can be another one. But you can't have three 1,000-yard rushers at the same time on the same team. That's impossible, especially when you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. You're not going to run the ball that much. And what you really should have done is get this guy some weapons. And you absolutely failed. He asked for weapons. You said no. You're like, well, we got you Devin Funchess in free agency, a guy who missed last season with an injury. So good luck. You get the same weapons as last year, at least most of them, and you get this
I mean, he's
little
got
bonus.
Equinemius St. Brown, he's got Devontae Adams, he's got Alan Lazard. Those are weapons that he's
But they haven't developed yet,
comfortable with.
and you're
No,
you're
they haven't.
hoping they make a jump from year one to year two, but it's a hope. And this is a team with an old quarterback who is looking to win now in a conference that is incredibly difficult. You have the 49ers, the Saints, the Buccaneers. It goes on and on and on, and they are probably the what fifth, sixth team now. They're not the number two seed anymore. Even if you're the number two seed, you don't get a bye week, but they're not. So they're going to be playing for the next 20 weeks. If they make it that far, they're not going to. They're going it's going to be brutal. They have a lot of competition to go through, and it's going to be an absolute nightmare because their quarterback doesn't have enough weapons. They may have a defense that could stop the opposing offense, but are they going to be able to put points up? It's going to be really hard.
Yeah, I think that Green Bay and Seattle definitely struggled, and um, it's not going to bode well for them going into this year. You talked about the Packers. I think every team in their division got better. Um, I think every team in the NFC West got better, except for these two teams. I think that they both took major steps back. It'll be interesting to see because obviously it's all speculation. It's all on paper. Things need to happen as we expect them to happen. That doesn't always happen. So, I mean, there's plenty of room for us to be wrong, but there's also plenty of room for us to be right. So why don't you guys tell us what you guys think? Um, who do you have as your biggest winners and losers? What was your best and worst fit? Who do you think was a steal? And what did you think about Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts? I mean, those were the topics that we truly felt that we wanted to talk about today, and I want to get you guys' thoughts on that. So feel free to leave us a comment both on this video, on our Twitter page, where we're always talking with fans, and we love doing that.
Yeah, now
So if you
we
guys,
have finally have something to talk about. So let's get to debating. I'm sure there's some topics that we talked about and that we didn't even talk about that a lot of people have questions about and really want to get deeper into. So we have the time. Obviously, we're all still in quarantine. Day I don't even know 40 something at this point. So you know, let us know what your thoughts are, and we can't wait to see you out there. Talk to you.
Absolutely. Until next time, see you later, Trash Talkers.
See you guys.